We are talking Texas A&M football on the Ourlads Football Network, Ourlads Football YouTube Channel. And anytime we talk about the Texas A&M Aggies, we're really stoked to have Olin Buchanan on the show. And Olin, great to have you on again.
Well, it's great to be here. Thank you for including me on this.
You got it. I wouldn't think of anybody else to talk to get prepared for the upcoming season for Texas A&M football. I know last season was very disappointing with Wigman going out with an injury. A 5-star quarterback recruit, that's never fun. Of course, the coaching situation wasn't fun. But I don't know. Taking a look at this team this year, and we're going to go into the depth chart and all, but just generally speaking, I think there's a lot to be excited about this season. I think this Texas A&M football team is going to be maybe a surprise team this year.
Well, it could be. It's been the surprise team twice, since I've been covering them since I've been in the SEC. The first year in 2012, with the Johnny Manziel year, that was a surprise year. And then 2020, when they finished 8-1, they were probably the surprise team in the whole country. Now, you look at the roster, and the roster, you could look at it and say, hey, this team is capable of 10 wins. But then as Texas A&M fans have learned not to take anything for granted, all optimism has to be cautious because, quite frankly, A&M has grossly underachieved the last 3 seasons.
Yep. But now they have a new head coach. Let's start there with the new coach. So Mike Elk goes in. He did a great job over at Duke. Tremendous, really. Tell us about how he's acclimating to his new digs.
Well, I think he's just hit the ground running here. He'd been the defensive coordinator here before he went to Duke. Was highly popular for the job he did as a defensive coordinator. You know what? He came into this job, and on the second day on the job, he fired a couple of position coaches that quite frankly needed it. Those positions had been underachieving. Not long after that, he met with the Texas High School Coaches Association. There was some bridges that had been burned between the high school coaches and the previous staff, and he went out to mend those fences. And from talking to the people, the president and vice president of that organization, they felt like those bridges had been, or those fences had been mended. Then he went out, got heavy into the transfer portal, brought in some really good players like Nick Scorton of Purdue, Cassius Howe from Bowling Green, and Will Lee from Kansas State. Guys that are expected to come in and make a contribution, maybe even an impact immediately, and did okay in recruiting. Brought in Tommy Moffitt for strength and conditioning, and decided to hire a special teams coordinator, which was absolutely necessary because, quite frankly, A&M special teams has been a travesty for a couple of years. So he came right in and addressed a lot of situations. Now, how those are going to play out, we'll see. But at least he seemed to understand where A&M was having problems and look to address it immediately.
All right. Well, let's. But I tell you what. Before we dive into the depth chart, what you mentioned some of the coaches. So tell us a little bit about what kind of scheme changes fans are going to be looking forward to on both sides of the ball.
Well, I think offensively, that's what they're really excited about with Colin Klein coming over from Kansas State. Just seeing an offense with some imagination, with some pre-snap movement, and coming up with ways to move a defensive player with one guy so you could get it to another guy. You saw the way, if you watched Kansas State last year and the year before, you saw an explosive offense. And if you watched A&M the last couple of years, you saw a very stagnant offense. And so, again, I think a lot of the plays, when you get down to it, are the same. And it's just the way you present them and maybe some of the way you scheme to make them successful. I thought A&M was just lining up, usually, unless they were playing Alabama, and they suddenly would use pre-snap movement and things like that. You say, well, where's this been all year?
Yeah.
Here. So I think that's what they're excited about. Just a guy with some imagination and, some pre-snap movement and doing some different things, that not being so predictable. A&M has been very predictable. And on defense, we were scratching our head a lot of times. A&M, their strength was the defensive line. And too often, the previous defensive coordinator would go to 3 linebackers, especially 2 years ago when you didn't have one. And it didn't, it'd go to 4 linebackers. And you're like, why are you taking the best guys off the field to put, he's trying to cover split out tight ends with a defensive end that line tackle and having turn to try to get back into coverage. And that didn't work. So there's just, hey, Jackson Dart's back there on 3rd and 10, but let's not run a spy, and he gets away from the rush and gains 20, and they go score. Yeah. All kinds of things you just scratch your head about, and they don't try to rush. They're rushing 3 against Miami with freshman corners. There were just so many things that you just scratch your head about, and Jay Bateman, you feel like he's going to do a better job for no other reason. He's going to have the influence of Mike Elko that, we saw the job that Mike Elko did years here.
Yeah. Even the Duke defense last year was, I hadn't seen Duke play defense like that maybe ever. So, that's why I think it's there's lots to get excited about. So let's go breaking down the depth chart, starting on offense. And again, we could start with Weigman because, again, it's football. So the quarterback position is everything. Injury wise, how does he look? Health wise, I should say, following the injury. And overall, I got to believe if he is healthy that there's a lot of excitement about what he could do this season.
Oh, yeah. In the spring, he was still having some effects from that broken foot. But since then, he went through August camp. He's fine. He's moving around real well. If he's not 100%, he's 90%, right? He didn't, through August camp, you didn't see anything that made you think, okay, this guy's not ready to go. He's limping or anything like that. In fact, he says he's 100%. And if a healthy Connor Weigman could be one of the top 4 or 5 quarterbacks in the SEC. I know there's a lot of good ones. If you go back and look at games he started and finished, and, some of those were when he was a true freshman, thrust into the lineup. His first game, he threw for 336 yards and 4 touchdowns against as a true freshman.
Yeah.
He's thrown for over 300 yards in 3 of the 7 games he started and finished. Some of them, they took him out early because they had big leads. So if you look at his numbers in those 7 games, again, games he started and finished, it projects to about a season of about 3,000 passing yards, about 30 touchdowns. And the thing that's really exciting about Connor, especially compared to previous quarterbacks here, is historically he hasn't thrown a lot of interceptions. He's thrown 2 interceptions in his career. Both of them were at Miami, and neither one of them were his fault. One of them, Anaya Smith, fell down because it was wet. The ball was going to be right on him, but he slipped before the ball got there and went, behind him to a defensive back for an interception. The other one was a 4th down play, and he was under heavy pressure, and he had to throw it into the end zone because you couldn't take a sack, and he just put it up for grabs. But Connor has been very reliable with the ball, but he's not conservative because he will take those shots downfield. In fact, I think he's the guy that'd rather throw it deep. If he has an option to throw it deep or throw the check down or even the mid-ranged ball, if he feels like he's got a legitimate chance to complete it, he's going for the deep ball. And so far, that hasn't hurt him.
Well, right now, I'm looking at Texas A&M as a 40-1 shot to win the championship, which is a really nice number. And it's a number that I'm going to use. And he's definitely a big reason for that. So hopefully he's healthy. If he misses a game or a little bit of action, at least Henderson had some opportunity to play last year. Is he the clear number 2?
No, I don't think he is. He might be. But just last week, we were talking to Mike Elko about the quarterback situation. Although he would not say who was first or second team, the second guy he mentioned was Marcel Reed, a sophomore out of Nashville, who came in the bowl game against Oklahoma State and threw for over 300 yards and had about a 30-yard touchdown run. When he turned the corner, he was gone. The guy can really run. Now, I'm sorry, Jalen Henderson came in last year. He was the third quarterback that A&M had to turn to, and he played really well. In fact, he was a pleasant surprise. I think he played much better than anyone expected. And so if he is the number 2 quarterback, I don't think anybody's going to be worried about it. But Marcel Reed just has such a higher upside.
Okay.
And he's an exciting player. So hopefully we won't have to find out who the number 2 guy is.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm right there with you. All right. So let's take a look at this backfield, because it doesn't look like there's one specific running back that's ahead of everybody. It looks like a nice little 4-man monster, even though Owens, the 5-star, is injured. What's up with Owens?
Yeah, he's probably out for the year. He says some kind, I think it's a broken foot, some kind of foot injury. And let's say A&M wants to get into the playoff, he could possibly maybe be able to return by then, but they think the injury is going to keep him out at least through the regular season. And that's a big loss. I don't think that Ruben was going to be the starter, but he's a guy that has probably the most big playability and the highest upside. And he was definitely going to be a factor in the running game. So, there's no way to sugarcoat it. That's a significant loss. I still think Le'Veon Moss was going to be the starter. He's a big guy, hard to arm tackle, runs with a lot of power, but has more agility than you might expect. I've seen him spin off of tackles, has not great speed, but good enough speed. He has a couple of 30-yard runs last year, and that's not any small accomplishment behind the offensive line that they put out there a year ago. So Le'Veon Moss, I think that's your starter, and he's a solid guy. He's a good football player. I think they're not worried about it. Again, I think he was going to start anyway. They have Amari Daniels behind him, and Amari has that big play potential too. In fact, he led A&M in rushing last year and had a 75, 76-yard run against Auburn. And then they brought in E.J. Smith. You might know his dad, Emmett.
Oh, yeah.
Emmett Smith. So he transferred in from Stanford. And so, those are the 3 running backs they're going to be going with.
Yeah, so I mean, it's really nice to have someone like E.J. Smith as the team's number 3 running back right now. So I know he was really starting to develop there at Stanford. Okay, now let's take a look at the receivers, the wide receiver situation. It looks like there are 3 that stick out, and those are the 3 that look like right there on the depth chart: Walker, Thomas, and Muhammad. So, tell me about these 3 guys. Thomas, he was a little banged up last year, right?
Yeah, he missed some time, and that's too bad. That's the big concern about him. Look, Noah Thomas has really good speed. He has great hands. I mean, he has outstanding hands, and he's 6'6", long arms, so he has this great catch radius. But can he stay healthy? Is he strong enough to get off press coverage? That was kind of an issue last year with Tommy Moffitt coming in as a strength and conditioning coach. They worked on that. He does look more muscular, but again, he's got to show that he can get off the line of scrimmage and make catches in traffic and all those kind of things that number 1 receivers do. The concern about A&M is I don't think they have a true number 1 guy. That's guy when you have to have it, you look for. Now, if anybody could develop into that, that's probably Noah Thomas. He's probably their number 1 option, but to become that guy. And if he does show that's additional strength and muscle, that he's able to take advantage of it, then he could be that guy and he could have a big year. But all those receivers you just mentioned, they've had big games. They've had flashes of being, flashes of brilliance, really, but none of them have shown that they can be a steady number 1 receiver over the course of a season. Moose Muhammad, you might have remember seeing a one-handed touchdown catch that was just spectacular against LSU 2 years ago. And he's a guy that makes big plays, but he was behind Aniyah Smith and he could never get on the field. It was curious that they never looked for him anywhere else. We'll put him start in front of somebody else. But so that raised some questions about it. He's got to go out there and prove that he can be a consistent every down contributor. And Ja'Day Walker was extremely pleasant surprise as a transfer portal guy out of Grand Valley State last year. Had about, I don't have the stats in front of me, but he had about 50 catches, maybe 40 for 400 or 500 yards. I mean, he was very productive. He was really good in the second half of the season. Had a couple of 100-yard games. So I don't know that he's the type of guy, or I don't know if they have the type of guy that stretches the defense that the defense really worries about. But they have a lot of guys who are capable. If they do have somebody that can stretch the field, if it doesn't turn out to be Noah, maybe it's this freshman Terry Bussey, who's a 5-star guy that they brought in, and they started him at corner. And then I think they looked so good at corner, and then some questions at receiver, they moved him over. They also like this kid Cyrus Allen, who's a transfer from Louisiana Tech. But the guy they really liked, that they were really excited about, was a transfer portal kid from Troy, Jabari Barber, and he got hurt in spring. They thought he might be out for the year, but the last update we got him there, he's healing faster than they thought, and they think they might even have him back before September. But they don't expect before September's over. But they don't expect to have him back for the season opener against Notre Dame.
Okay, so I catch my breath here. All right, so the starters look like they're the starters, and there's the good size there, as you mentioned, with Walker, all-day Walker, as they call him. And then you've got a couple of guys that you mentioned on the bench. Now, Allen, so he was the guy that came over from Louisiana Tech, and actually had a pretty good couple of seasons with Louisiana Tech there. Very good average. I see there, 18.7 average the last couple of years. You mentioned Bussey. Okay, so Bussey, was he a 5-star, you said?
He was a 5-star guy out of a little tiny town in East Texas called Timpson, but they're really excited to get him away from LSU. And he's very versatile. He played quarterback in high school like a lot of kids do. Very versatile. And so the first thought was, hey, let's give him a look at corner. And I think what happened was they brought in a bunch of corners in the transfer portal, and they're looking so good there. They said, well, where can we best utilize him? And so we moved over to offense. And I think they'll bring him along slowly, but a lot of big play potential with that kid. And Cyrus, they really like him. And I wouldn't be 100% surprised if he's in the starting lineup instead of Moose on August 31st. I'm not calling it, but I wouldn't be surprised.
And then Barber. So Barber's a Troy transfer.
Yeah.
And last year I see his numbers. Barber had almost 1,000. He had 999 yards. So he had 1,000 yards on 75 receptions and a 13.3 average. So he led Troy. Troy was a very good team last year in the Sun Belt. So, and you're saying that chances are he'll probably miss September.
I think he could be back before September's over.
Okay.
Definitely not going to be ready for the Notre Dame game, but he was turning some heads when he got here, and they were saying, hey, man, we got something really special with this kid. And then, foot injury. But again, they thought he was gone for the year, so they're pretty excited to have a chance to have him back.
That is a very deep and talented receiving core. Those are 6 talented kids, and you only need one of them to break out. So give me your best. Now, you said that Thomas, I think you seem to indicate he's got the highest upside. So did you believe that he's the one that you would, if you had a bet on someone to have a breakout, would it be Thomas?
Yeah, it would be. He just has so much ability, and I think the work under the guidance, the work in the strength and conditioning room under the guidance of Tommy Moffitt's going to help him out. And he just, he's played SEC competition, knows what it's about. He just needs to take the next step.
All right. How's the tight end room? Not that I think they need a whole lot with the wide receivers they have, but do they have like a legitimate number one?
Well, I think so. Trey Watson is a transfer from Fresno State. He had a nice year there last season. And Colin Klein, if you look in his work at Kansas State, he likes to throw the tight end. Now, Donovan Green's a guy that was excellent as a freshman. He was a big surprise now, but then he got hurt last year in camp and missed all of last season. And if he's right, he's a heck of a threat. But he looks like he still looks like he's trying to come all the way back. So I think Trey Watson becomes your starter there, and then it's a coin flip, I think, but where they'll look after Trey. Obviously, they'll see if Donovan can be at full speed. If not, they have Theo Mellenostrom, a guy who came here 3 years ago from Sweden. Certainly looks the part at 6'5", 265. But still learning how to play football. And they have a sophomore kid. They've had him call him a freshman named Jaden Platt. I think he has a lot of potential and a lot of promise. But Trey Watson, the kid from Fresno State, is going to be your number one option there at tight end.
Okay. And that, I know he's not on the screen here, but Miller that came over from Purdue, is he also part of the rotation?
Could be, but when I've seen him out of practice recently, he's been in street clothes. So
Okay.
I don't know what's going there. They haven't a significant injury, but haven't got a chance to actually see him in action.
All right, so the offensive line. Now, this would be the one spot on offense that I'm guessing is the biggest concern.
Yes,
okay.
correct.
So what's the major concern on the line?
Well, it just hasn't been very good, quite frankly. That's why Connor got hurt last year. You know, a guy just missed an assignment, and Auburn blitz and safety had a 10-yard free shot at him. So they got to get better there. Now, when Tommy Moffitt came in, he talked to us, and he said all the testing, they came away, and he said, you know what, we just weren't very strong. We're not strong enough to win at the point of attack. And if you watched how A&M was in short yardage last year, and they weren't good, you realize he had a point. So that was a focus of the offseason, was getting the guys stronger so they could win at the point of attack. And then they brought in some guys. There's reasons to believe that they're going to be better. I think Adam Cushing, as new offensive line coach, is a reason. I think Tommy Moffitt's a reason. And then you bring in a guy like Armaj Reed-Adams, who was a starter at Kansas, and he could probably be a starter at right tackle. You know, that's a reason. They played Chase Basantes last year as a true freshman. He's a guard, but they played him at right tackle. A true freshman is going to have some growing pains in the SEC anyway, but now you're playing him out of position. I didn't think he was awful, but they're moving him back to guard this year where he belongs, and he's gotten a lot stronger. Now he has some experience behind him. I think he's a reason to feel like they're going to be better. And Trey Zune at left tackle is their best player on the line, and he's been playing hurt, and he's healthy. So another reason to feel like they're going to be better. But look, that still leaves two more spots, and quite frankly, we don't know how they're going to fill them. I think it comes down to the center competition between Mark Naboo and a transfer from Utah, Coley Falu. Whoever starts at center, if it's Coley, then I think Naboo will end up being your starter at right guard, where he started, I think, 12 games last year at guard. If they go ahead and go with Naboo at center, then Cam Dewberry, who is a highly regarded recruit 2 years ago, would and he has started a lot of games at guard. So I think they're still trying to figure out those two positions.
Oh, sounds like the depth chart that we have here is perfect then for the offensive line. Excellent. And you say Zune's the best of them all at this point. He's the number one.
He's been a really good player. He's been a starter since his freshman year. He's a tough kid, played a full year with a torn labrum and a bad knee and never complained about it. He's healthy now, and you know there's some big things expected from him.
All right, let's move on. And I'm assuming that if there's any injuries, that's trouble.
Well, yeah, especially if who they are too. They have a couple of tackles that have had great moments. Reuben Owens. Reuben Father, he played really well as a true freshman. Had a great game against Will Anderson of Alabama when A&M upset him, and then took a step back as a sophomore and got hurt, and is quite frankly trying to get back into the starting lineup. And then Demetrius Crownover's a big kid with all kinds of athletic ability, but just hasn't shown any consistency yet.
Okay. Let's move on over to the defensive side. And we can start with the player that you mentioned, Scouting from Purdue, one of the really elite pass rushers in college football.
Yeah, he had 10 sacks last year at Purdue, and that included 2 against Michigan. So it wasn't like he was just, getting a patting his stats against bad competition. In fact,
Yeah.
I think all of them were against Power 5 teams, and 8 of them came in Big Ten play, with, again, 2 against Michigan. He's from Bryan, Texas, which is right next to College Station. Came out of high school at 220 pounds. Mike Elko said, I love your ability, but I don't think you're going to be big enough to play in the SEC. So he goes up to Purdue and puts on 60 pounds. He's 280, and they said, you're big enough now. We'll let him. So mom and dad encouraged him to come on home. So he's back, and they're really excited about him.
And Howell, you mentioned him. That's the transfer from Bowling Green. Is he going to end up starting, you think?
I don't think he's going to be a starter, but I think he's going to play a lot, and I think they'll use him, especially on obvious third down situations. And he's going to be in and out of the lineup, probably trading places with Shamar Stewart, a guy that they think might have a breakout year. He shows definitely some flashes, an incredible athlete. I saw him run down a wide receiver from New Mexico. And you say, well, that's New Mexico. Yeah, but he's still a wide receiver being chased by a 6'5", 290-pound kid. Great speed, great athleticism. He just has to put it all together. So I think you'll see a lot of Shamar Stewart and a lot of Cassius Howell maybe alternating opposite Nick Scorton.
All right. But you think Stewart's the starter and Howell comes off the bench, and you think Stewart is a breakout candidate as well?
I really do. And I think you'll see a lot of situations where all 3 of them will be on the field at the same time.
All right. And then inside, let's see, Turner. He is is he the lead dog inside?
Yeah, I think so. He played defensive end last year at 270, and yet he's a defensive tackle. So he added 20 or 30 pounds, moved inside where he belongs. And, they feel like, that he can be a high draft pick, that he's that good. He's a 300-pound kid that really moves. Like I said, he played the defensive end out of necessity last year and led A&M defensive lineman with 6 sacks. Very active player. So it's, he's one of their best players that this year gets to play at his best position. So they're expecting big things from him. And whoever's opposite him is going to benefit from his presence, whether it be DJ Hicks, who was a sophomore who came in as a 5-star guy and showed some flashes as a freshman, or Albert Regis, a guy that's been around a lot and been a backup, but really looks like he's made some gains. I think a lot of the guys on this team have benefited from the presence of the new strength conditioning coaches, and Albert looks like a guy that maybe can push DJ Hicks for that starting role.
And Johnson, that's another transfer from Wisconsin, so he'll get in the mix too.
Played a lot of games in the Big Ten. Big old kid that I don't know if he's going to be in the starting lineup, but he's definitely in the rotation. He's gonna play. I look for him to rotate like everybody else does their defensive linemen quite a bit. Maybe not as much as they did in the past, but a guy like Rodus Johnson is going to play a lot.
All right, at linebacker, the one that really sticks out to me naturally is York. The fact that he was a true freshman last year and ended up with the second most tackles on the team. So that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, Torian came in as a 3-star recruit that only got offered a scholarship late. Now, Elko was already recruiting to Duke and thought he had him. And then last minute, the last year's coaching staff came and said, hey, we're going to offer you a scholarship. And he says, yeah, I'll take it. He's from Temple, Texas, which is about 2 hours away. So it made sense. And he, real smart kid. So he was able to enroll early into A&M as a freshman and go through spring football. And he came out of spring as a starter. And, he just could have been, getting ready for his prom. And he was already a starting linebacker at Texas A&M, and just was the most pleasant surprise last year. 2 years ago, linebacker was like a black hole for A&M, and they brought in this kid, and you know what do you know? He had linebacker instincts. He's smart. He knows how to play the position. He came in, had 74 tackles. Now, it helped him that he had Edgerrin Cooper, who was an All-American, playing next to him.
Yeah.
You know, no doubt that he benefited from that. But he also just showed that he could play at a high level, made freshman All-American, and impressed his teammates so much that even though he's just a sophomore, he was named a team captain. So they say he's the type that really understands football, knows what his coach wants, the old quote, coach on the field type of guy. And if he continues to progress, you know, A&M has a special guy there. They couldn't be happier than what they've got with him. Now, they got to find, you know, they had Edgerrin Cooper next to him last year. Again, All-American, second-round pick of the Packers. So what do you got next to him? You know, you brought in Scooby Williams from Florida. We'll see about him. He was a starter there, but there were some questions about him. Solomon DeShields was a starter at Pitt with about 50, 60 tackles. He's back, but I think the guy that's really been impressed on him is a guy named Damian Sanford, who was a freshman last year from Katy, Texas, about an hour from College Station. And all the words we got is that, you know, big, strong, fast kid that's really turned some heads. But you could put, at this point, you could put either three, the names of all three of them in a bag and pull them out, and you might have just as good a chance of predicting who's going to be the starter against Notre Dame.
By the way, that's a travesty that Texas A&M has had issues at linebacker. Come on now, that shouldn't be happening.
It shouldn't be, but really the linebacker play was just after the last 2 years. Last year, you know, again they had Edgerrin Cooper. Finally, you know, he reached potential, and Torian came in and played so well, but a couple of years before that, the linebacker play was just. I'll be nice and just say subpar.
Yeah. All right. So now let's wrap up with the secondary. And I don't happen to notice anyone jumping out to me on the depth chart. So do they have like a leader back there, like he's the guy?
Yeah, Bryce Anderson.
Okay.
And maybe the reason he doesn't jump out at you is his first year they played him at nickel. Mike Elko recruited him as a safety. So, of course, Elko was gone. They played him at nickel, maybe just trying to get the best five guys on the field. Okay, I understand that. Then last year, they kept moving him back and forth between nickel and safety. Mike Elko came in and says, hey, I recruited this guy as a safety. He's a safety. He was never meant to be a nickel. We're going to put him where he's best. And he's been good. Again, he's been playing and starting lineup since he was a freshman. And I think he has, of all the guys in the secondary, he has as much star potential in the secondary as anybody else has at their position. Had a real nice interception against Alabama last year, ran with it well. He's a high school quarterback, you know, great athlete. So they're really excited about what he could be. And quite frankly, they're really excited about what he has been.
Okay. So we've got someone. All right. Let's take, I look at the depth chart and I see out of the top 10 DBs, it looks like 6 of them are transfers.
Right. Yeah.
So that's a dangerous situation in the secondary. How's it looking as far as the depth chart?
Well, I think you'll probably see 2 transfers starting at corner. In fact, they feel so good about those guys. Tariq Chappelle, who would be a 4th-year starter at cornerback, is moving to nickel. And I think because Will Lee, a transfer from Kansas State, they call him the blanket. He's a likely starter. And then there's a transfer, B.J. Mays, and then Des Ricks, who is a 5-star coming out of high school, transferred in from Alabama. So one of those are going to start at the other one. I'm thinking probably Des Ricks and Will Lee will be your starters. Now, you could say, well, that's kind of a concern that you've got these guys who are transfers coming in to start. My answer would be, well, if you saw what was going on at corner last year, you wouldn't be as concerned. You would be more optimistic because, quite frankly, they were put in a position. They had a kid who was a safety in the ACC that they put out of position at corner. It was unfair to him, and he didn't play as well at corner and had a bad year. He's moved on, playing safety in the NFL, trying to make a team at the NFL as a safety. they just didn't have corners. And at some points they had to put true freshmen out there.
Was that Richardson?
I'm sorry?
Was that Richardson?
Who was the corner?
Yeah, that you were talking about. That's in the NFL now. Damani Richardson.
It was, it was a kid from Boston College.
Josh DeBerry.
DeBerry. Yeah, it was DeBerry.
Got it.
No, Damani Richardson was a safety that they bulked up to look like a linebacker, and he had his worst year of his career. Not that he was bad. Has now looked like he's focused more on speed again, and just had an interception with the Panthers last week. So there's a lot of things we scratched our head about. But no, DeBerry was a kid that was a good safety. They finally moved him to safety, and he made some plays, but he was out of position at corner. So it was between Des Ricks and B.J. Mays and Will Lee, and then some of the guys who were freshmen last year are now sophomores.
Yep.
The cornerback position, again, cautiously optimistic that it could be significantly better. I think the biggest question in the secondary is who's going to be that safety opposite Bryce Anderson. Dalton Brooks is a sophomore, played really well when he got a chance as a freshman, has a lot of upside, a lot of potential there. Trey Jones, the guy they brought in, and then Donovan Sanders, Marcus Ratcliffe, a bunch of guys they brought in from the transfer portal. Like you mentioned, top 6 guys are all transfer guys. So whoever we may not know who's going to be that starting safety until we see the defense come out against Notre Dame.
All right. Yeah, it looks like Jones has a lot of experience coming over from Central Michigan, so maybe that gives him a leg up. But hey, that's a position. Like every team may have a one spot or two, so at least they've got bodies. Okay, and they've got structure. They've got a coaching staff that seems to know what they're doing. Not sure what happened there with the old staff, but sometimes I don't know. So, what do you think it was with Jimbo? Do you think it was that he was too set in his old ways or something like that?
Yeah, I think that was part of it, and I think he was. I think he was also too loyal to certain assistants that maybe they were good coaches somewhere else, but they weren't getting the job done here, and needed to probably would have been better served if he would have made some changes in his staff.
All right, so your breakout, because this would have been a question I would have asked you anyway. So we've got Thomas, a wide receiver, as a breakout candidate. We also have Stewart,
Lamar Stewart,
as a breakout candidate, and it sounds like to me Anderson might be a breakout candidate. Would I be correct?
Broken out. I mean, he's been a good player, but maybe this is the year that he goes from being a guy that is a good player to a guy that could challenge for all SEC, recognition. Okay.
And then schedule wise, the big game with Notre Dame is coming soon. So, I don't know. It's kind of tricky for me whenever you start their first game for college teams and you start with these big matchups. I'm not sure it's a good thing, but there's a playoff now. And because of a real playoff, of the real playoff, if you're in the SEC and you have 2 losses, but you could still win the SEC championship, of course you're going to the playoff. Matter of fact, if you're in the SEC championship game and you have 2 losses, you're still going to the playoffs. So I think now scheduling these types of games aren't as obstacles as I think they once were. Florida also in September, but overall, once you get past, say, Notre Dame, even because Florida is still, nobody knows what to expect from them. It's not a bad schedule. It's actually a pretty good schedule, which is another reason why I like their chances this year.
Well, it's as advantageous a schedule as you're going to get in the SEC, right? Because you got Notre Dame, you got Missouri, LSU, and Texas, all top 15 teams, but they're all coming to Kyle Field. So you're going to have your challenges, but at least you get them at home. Now, and A&M's been a pretty good home team. Now, that said, they've been an abysmal road team. You probably already know this. They haven't won a true SEC road game since 2021.
Yeah, that's not good. That's got to end.
They went on the road at Missouri. So, you might look at them and say, hey, they look like a better team than Florida, or they look like a better team than South Carolina, or a better team than Mississippi State, where, by gosh, they've had some of the most devastating losses in Starkville. Better teams, maybe than this one, have lost in Starkville. So you don't take anything for granted at A&M. Look, but you got in the SEC. You know, this is what you asked for. It's not supposed to be easy. So
Yeah.
I think A&M has a chance to have a good team, but they're going to have to prove some things. They're going to have to prove that they can start winning again on the road, and they're going to have to prove that they're as good as their roster says they should be.
Yeah, because they only have one true SEC road game until October 19th. So, if anything, that's a real big measuring stick game, as of course will the Notre Dame game to kick off the season. So, and in Missouri, you get them at home. So, I look, like you said, they got to learn to win. And if they could also learn how to win on the road on September 14th, that would be a huge, huge step. And then I think we would know for sure at that point. I think if they can get off to a nice start, if they can somehow find a way, beat Notre Dame, and then go to Florida and win and get off to a 3-0 start, I think that it's all there. It's all on the table. Stay healthy. You got a legitimate national championship shot. So are the fans feeling the same way? I am. That this isn't, and I get what you're saying. I'm sure they're very cautious about being optimistic because I'm a Jet fan. I know how that feels. So is that the case? There's excitement, but they're cautious.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, here's the deal. Last year, A&M was in the fourth quarter with either a lead or within a touchdown of taking the lead in every game they lost. I mean, they were in a position to win every to beat Alabama. They were in a position to beat Tennessee. They were in a position to beat Ole Miss. They were in a position to beat LSU and Miami. And they either couldn't hold the lead or they couldn't make the plays that they had to make. And, you know.
And that was without Weigman.
Yeah, that was with
mostly, yeah.
All the way down to your third string quarterback. In fact, they played the string quarterback in the bowl game. So, you know, you look at it that way and you say, well, you know, with a better coaching staff or maybe a more imaginative ones,
yeah,
you know, maybe you can make the plays that can turn those close losses into a close win. But they've got, like you said, they've got to learn to win. It's never been about talent. They have the talent. But they've got to learn to win and to make the plays when they have to be made. I can't tell you how many times they were in position to make a big play and they'd go for it on third down or fourth down and short and just didn't make it. So I guess that's the hope, is that with a, you know, different guy in charge, maybe some different dynamics going on, that the key play that eluded you so often last year, you know, you finally make it, and that you know, that changes the fortunes of this team.
That's football. I mean, you can have that happen that one year. It just can't make the plays. You got injuries, things. It's just one of those years. But then the next season, because you have the talent, all of a sudden everything just starts to click, especially thanks to a new staff and new excitement and just the changed perception and all that. And that's why I feel the way I do. I think, again, nobody's guaranteeing nothing.
Greg, last year they're in Tennessee, and early in the game, not too early, but they're driving. They're around like the Tennessee 20, and they're looking at fourth and less than a yard. And of course, they come up with this play where they finally got movement and guys are moving around, and they don't get. In fact, the quarterback tried to, I guess, option, and he tripped over the guard's foot, and they lose a yard, and they end up losing that game by like 3 points. Right?
Yeah.
Opportunity wasted.
Yeah.
In the press conference, Jimbo Fisher was asked, does the quarterback sneak, is that just an irrelevant play now? Well, the next week when they were in short yardage, they ran the quarterback sneak and converted and went on to win 3 games in a row after that. So I think sometimes their coaching just made things more difficult than it needed to be.
That is a great point, Olin. By the way, how can Texas A&M fans or SEC fans in general, how can they check you out? I know you're over at texags.com.
Right.
Do you have your own podcast?
I don't at this point. Maybe I'll look into it one of these days. But no,
Come on, Olin. Get with it.
Texags.com. It is the abbreviated version of Texas Aggies. Just texags.com. You can follow us on Twitter too.
Oh.
And if you're so inclined, you can follow me at Twitter. I don't hide behind a pseudonym. It's my name. You can see it right there. So if you're so inclined to give me a follow, I'd appreciate it if you would.
Absolutely. And I'll make sure we'll get some proper links out there too, so people can check you out. It's going to be a very tough season in the SEC, but if any, there are certain teams that could do it. And Texas A&M is definitely one of them. And Olin, when you are ready to make that jump at the podcast and you're thinking more seriously about it, just give me a call. Come on, we can put it together here.
I'll do that.
And I might even at some point just try to convince you even before you've convinced yourself. So, Olin, I appreciate it. I look forward to the opportunity to talk to you during the season, and I hope it's a real good one.
We're looking forward to it. Thank you for having me.